intimidating. But the most widely distributed programs in the world, MS-DOS or MS-DOS, stands for Microsoft Disk Operating System. This state-of-the-art computer program is used in millions of computers worldwide every day, both at home and the office. However, many personal computers aren't used to their fullest due to misuse or misunderstanding of MS-DOS.
Video logic through this learning program will teach you how MS-DOS works and why.
Instead of trying to show you procedural keystrokes that you'll forget within minutes, we will make you conscious of the meaning, importance, and usage of the most frequently used DOS commands.
You will be able to better manage the data saved on the computer disk.
We will not bore you with DOS commands that are seldom used or that you may never need.
And by having your logic notes handy, you'll have the printed information you need close to your computer.
There you'll find the keystroke approach and practical hints that will help you increase your productivity.
They make perfect learning companions.
Now, sit back and relax, and we will take you on a most interesting voyage through your computer and its disk operating system.
A personal computer has several integrated parts.
A way to receive data, technically called an input device, like the keyboard.
A way to process data, called a central processing unit, or CPU for short.
A way to temporarily save data while it is being processed, called the random access memory, or RAM.
A way to temporarily show the processed data in a readable form, usually called the monitor, or CRT, for cathode ray tube.
A way to permanently save the processed information through the printer, and a way to save, also permanently, the information in a computer-readable way, called a disk.
And all of those elements are managed by MS-DOS, or its cousin, the IBM version, PC-DOS. We will mean either version when we just say DOS.
Actually, the disk operating system manages more than just the disks. Its name only tells part of the story.
It is also responsible for making different brands of computers, printers, keyboards, monitors, disks, memory sizes, and other computer parts all work together with little or no variation.
Thousands of different software applications, such as spreadsheets, word processors, database managers, accounting programs, graphics packages, project management programs, and desktop publishing are all capable of working under the same basic environment.
Thanks to DOS, we can easily have all those programs which help and improve almost every facet of our lives and businesses.
And actually, most of the DOS responsibilities are done without anyone ever noticing them.
However, the data disk and its management is mostly your responsibility, and the better you manage them, the better your computer and your software applications will perform.
Normally, when we have any kind of information, we try to organize it through a filing system.
And for a filing system to be effective, it has to be well planned and organized by following some basic principles, which are:
to place similar data together, putting like things filed together.
To be sure that all the data has the date and, if possible, the time, so that you can identify when the data was created or altered.
Always label all folders with an appropriate name that is easily identified and easy to recall.
If using different file cabinet drawers, be sure that you identify each drawer with a label that identifies what's in the drawer. Be sure to save only the information that you will use or need in the future, and toss out what is not needed.
Every once in a while, review your files and their organizational structure.
Some may need to be moved to a more permanent storage place, especially the old stuff that makes the folders fat and hard to access and use.
Original files that are not as important anymore may need to be moved from one drawer to another to a more out-of-the-way place.
The label should be changed to a more logical or understandable name if a folder's identity is not clear enough.
Always be sure to make photocopies of your most important data to protect your files against possible catastrophes like theft or fire.
Be sure to do this as often as necessary and as is practical.
And all of the tasks that you perform with your conventional folders and files, like we have just described, should be performed with your electronic disk files using DOS.
And DOS performs all of these tasks faster, better, and more accurately than we ever could.
In fact, its only drawback is that it's cryptic, and its orders are assigned names and abbreviations that are sometimes confusing.
But once you understand the not-so-bad shorthand command language, you will be able to do the work of an office full of information organizers with little or no problems at all.
We can plan, organize, and utilize a computer filing system by understanding how much of its structure is just the same and the few things that are different. For example, there are important differences between a floppy and hard disk system.
On a floppy disk computer system, you have the ability to save and store an unlimited amount of data on several removable disks, and to transport that data from one place to another. However, the amount of data that your computer may access at any given time is only the files that you have on a single disk.
On a floppy system, the DOS files on either your 5 1/4 inch disk or your 3 1/2 inch disk are inserted into the computer disk drive every time you start up your system. This is commonly called booting up your system.
Hard disk computers that have larger memory storage capacities normally have DOS ready anytime you need it. So when you boot up a hard disk system, you don't have to insert the DOS disk each time.
Please note that any DOS command that is explained here works equally well for the hard disk system and the floppy disk system.
When DOS is booted up, it verifies the correct condition of the computer and its parts. DOS checks everything out.
Then DOS asks a few questions. The first is the date and time. DOS is going to time-date stamp your files, and if you don't give DOS the correct information, you're going to lose an important reference in your filing system.
If you're just too hurried to remember to type the time and date, then maybe you should think about getting a permanent clock calendar that tells DOS the time and date each time DOS boots up.
To answer DOS's questions, as well as to enter DOS's commands, just type in the command and hit the Enter key. Once we've told DOS the date and time, we get the DOS prompt.
We usually see an A or a C, depending on which disk drive DOS was booted up from.
Because DOS names the drives by letters, when you see the A prompt, then that indicates the A drive.
And that blinking little dash that always jumps one space ahead of what we type is called the cursor.
And before you get too far down any road, it's a good idea to know how to get back to where you started.
Absolutely. And anytime you want to get back to the beginning and make the computer start all over again without just turning the power off and on, you just reboot.
It's always more comforting to know that you can bail out anytime you want.
To reboot, you hold down the Control key, the Alt key, and the Delete key all at the same time.
It's also known as the panic button. When all else fails, reboot.
No matter how many times you reboot, DOS is ready to take your command from the prompt.
If you'll think of the traditional filing system that we talked about earlier, it will help you understand how the DOS commands and the DOS rules work.
Let's take an example. You want to look for a file folder. So you usually open the file drawer and run your fingers down the file folders until you see the one you're looking for. Then pull it out.
With DOS, the only place to run your fingers down is the screen. But first you have to tell DOS to list all the files from a certain drawer onto the screen. The command to tell DOS to do this is dir/p.
It's an abbreviation of the word directory, like telephone directory. Press Enter and up they come, one page at a time, all of the files that are in a particular directory.
When DOS lists files, it gives us some neat information about them, like looking on the outside of a file folder and knowing how big it is, what it's for, when it was last used, and what time it was when it was used.
DOS lists the first and last name, the size of the files in characters, and the date and time it was either created or last worked in. But with a computer, disks contain all the drawers and files.
As you know, the old file folders that we described before were usually full of papers and documents.
But on your computer, the different documents are grouped together and saved.
They are called files. And once you type a document, a piece of correspondence, save a spreadsheet, or any group of data, you name it something to keep it organized, like you would label a file folder.
Your disk files have specific names that you give them, and the label that you put on your files takes on a really special importance because the name of a file becomes a code that DOS uses. In fact, your file names become the most important element in building your disk organizational strategy.
That code name is designed to give you tremendous power to organize your files.
You get to pick any letter or number to name a file, and you give your files a name made from 1 to 8 characters.
Files have first and last names just like people do. But just like you and me, a last name is an assigned family name, not a name that you'd change quickly. In fact, last names normally belong to the family of the particular software that you're using.
File last names or extensions are usually telling what kind of data the file contains.
Like the last name, TXT is usually for text files, and DOC is for document files, WKS is for worksheet files, and DBF is for database files.
These last names are automatically given to your file names by the different kinds of software that you use.
Usually we use the 8 characters of the first name and leave the dot and the last name up to the software developers and programmers.
Only having 8 letters to name a file, the name you choose is better if it's a minimal selection of letters or numbers that will still always let you know what's inside the file or the file drawer.
It's important to name files combinations of letters and numbers that we can easily remember and to group them without using a space. DOS will not let you put a space in a file name. So group your characters together or use a dash or underline as dividers.
And before we move on, there are a couple of file last names that we want you to be familiar with.
The .exe and the .com file extensions are used for computer programs.
They contain the programs that do the tasks we want from a computer.
Also, there is another program file last name called BAT that contains short little program directions that you can learn to write with the help of logic notes.
With the BAT file, you can make your computer do special little tasks for you.
These are the only files that are executable, which means that they do something instead of contain information. But the execom BAT files run when you type in the first name and hit the Enter key.
Now we need a place to put our files.
Think about the different places that we could have put our old filing cabinets.
If each department had a separate door, then we could label them Department A, Department B, and so on.
And we would know where we put things by their department letter.
DOS labels the disk drives, and the disk can represent an entire filing department.
And if you wanted to go from one department to another, we would just walk over there.
When we change drives, we first insert a disk into that drive so we can go into it, and be sure to shut the drive door. Then we tell DOS to change drives. The command simply is to type in the letter of the drive we want to go to, followed by a colon. Hit Enter, and there you are.
And if the disk is permanent, like the C drive usually is, then that department is always there, and when you open it up, it should be full of drawers.
Then, when you open a drawer, you can look at the files with the dir/p command and see what files are inside.
We can scan our files and look for a particular file that we named.
The files we named are not kept in any particular order by DOS. They're not alphabetical. So when we name files, in what position we put the letters or numbers of our file names can be helpful.
DOS has a wildcard character that can represent any remaining characters. And if you wanted to list the files just from the ones that begin with the letter D, then you would type D, an asterisk, dot, asterisk.
Refer to your logic notes for several examples of using the wildcard character and how it can save time when working with your files.
DOS gave us a special command to change drives. But what about when you want to open a new drawer within a disk?
As we have said, it is important to place similar data together.
To do this, we must first create the drawer to put the files into.
When we open the door to the department named C and there aren't any drawers in there yet, all we will see are a few files on the floor.
The whole room is like one big drawer to DOS, and the files can be just stuffed in without any drawers at all. But what a mess.
The DOS command to make a drawer is MD.
You should name a drawer with the same logic as files.
DOS thinks a drawer is a subdirectory.
I want you to think of the subdirectory as a drawer.
Drawers should be organized by what's in them, just like you would label a drawer in a filing cabinet.
What do you do when you looked in one drawer for a file and the file you wanted wasn't there?
Well, look in another drawer, of course.
Maybe you put the file you're looking for in another drawer. Then you would have to change drawers. And instead of having to bend down in front of your filing cabinet, with DOS you just type in an abbreviated code.
The DOS command to move from one drawer to another is CD for change drawers, followed by the backslash and then the name you gave your drawer.
The backslash symbol is the DOS way of dividing the drawers. Like the parts of a filing cabinet separate the filing drawers. The backslash separates the disk drawers.
DOS divides a disk in a way that is structured after a fashion like a deep filing cabinet.
From the first main drawer, the connections to other subdrawers extend off by separate paths.
Then, each subdrawer can have its own set of drawers connected by more paths.
When you make a drawer, you can make as many drawers inside that drawer as you want, and so on, and so on, and so on.
Let's change drawers and see if we can find our 1040 tax file. We put it in a subdrawer called Taxes, which was a subdrawer of documents from the main drawer. And if you wanted to see just what was the path to this particular drawer, you used the special DOS command called prompt, followed by the cryptic symbols $P, $G, and hit enter.
That command is telling DOS to put the path after the prompt. The P stands for the path, and the G stands for the greater than symbol. It will list all of the subdrawers you're in, so you will know just where you are.
Logic Notes will explain how you can make this time-saving command a part of your permanent prompt.
Using the prompt command is kind of like Hansel and Gretel leaving crumbs along the path so they could find their way back through the forest.
The prompt command always lets DOS tell us just what drawer we're in and how many drawers it is back to the main drawer.
Frequently, you have to look into all those drawers and review the files and make some decisions.
You may find a file or two that you need to move or scrap.
To move a file, we use the copy command. Copy is a much-used command and is accomplished as easy as typing the word copy, the full name of the file you want to copy, first and last name, including the dot, then where you want it copied to. You can use the wildcard character to help you copy more than one file at a time.
Just be sure that the file you copy is not already in the drawer where you are copying it to, or you will overwrite one file with another and the overwritten version will be lost.
And there are great hints and tips in your logic notes that will show you how you can copy entire groups of files from one location to another, all at the same time.
It's almost like being able to photocopy an entire file cabinet all at once.
After you have copied a file to another drawer on a disk, you may wish to eliminate the old version of the file. This is easy with the delete command.
Just type in DEL, the file name, the enter key, and zap, its history.
And when file drawers get overstuffed, it's sometimes a good idea to sort through all of your disks and do a little spring cleaning with the copy and the delete command.
When you're working with your files, it's important to know that a file name can be relabeled.
Sometimes you want to call a file by a different name because you named it inappropriately.
Or sometimes you just want to call it something else.
Enter the DOS command, rename, the original file name, the new file name, and it's done.
All of the commands that we have told you about so far are called internal commands because they live inside the RAM memory of your computer all of the time that it's turned on.
Time, date, copy, delete, rename, and prompt are all available commands anytime you want them.
The other DOS commands that you need to use are called external commands because they are on the DOS disk or in the DOS subdrawer.
On a floppy system, you would insert the DOS disk to access the DOS external commands. Or you could change to the DOS drawer if you have a hard disk system.
On a hard disk, the best way to make them available all the time is by using another DOS command called path. You type path, an equal sign, the disk drive letter, a colon, the backslash, and the name of the DOS drawer, usually called DOS.
Once path has been entered, it's now a part of the RAM memory. And anytime you need any of the commands located in that drawer, all you have to do is type it in and you've got it. Like the prompt command, path is a great command to have loaded into your computer automatically every time you boot up. And your logic notes will show you how you can make this handy DOS command a part of the RAM memory all the time.
Everybody who needs to use a disk to store information has to do an important first step that must be done to all disks.
The format command prepares a disk to accept files.
You typically insert a disk that needs to be formatted into a drive and then type format, the letter of the drive that identifies the location of the disk that needs to be formatted, and the enter key.
It is very important, however, that you are aware of one very serious point about the format command.
Although the format command must be used quite a lot, the results of inadvertently formatting a disk that was not intended to be formatted can be tragic.
When the format command is entered, a disk that might contain important files, for instance, like all of the files on your hard drive, is wiped away.
Great care must be taken to be sure you are formatting the correct disk drive. In fact, here's a really great tip when using the format command.
If you will always just type in format B and a colon, then the enter key, you will always be on the right drive. Never format the C drive.
On a floppy system, you can always format disks in the number 2 or B drive. And on a hard disk, single floppy system, DOS will rename the A drive to B and give you instructions to insert a disk. So just always format B.
And after you have formatted a disk, DOS tells you how much available space is on the disk. But what if you wanted to check the available space on a disk that perhaps had some files already on it? Well, it's hard to see inside a floppy or hard disk, so you need a command to check a disk out.
The command to check a disk out, to make sure there is plenty of space left on it, and to check up on its general condition, is check disk.
The command is a cryptic version of check disk, only made up of 6 letters, CHKDSK.
Check disk tells us whether a disk has been formatted and how much computer and disk memory is left. It gives the number of files and drawers, and if any sectors are bad.
It's like getting the latest news on your computer disk situation.
Now, we're going to address a very serious subject.
Don't let an equipment malfunction or an electrical short cause you to lose your data.
All the time you spent creating that wealth of information on your disks is too valuable to throw away. Please, make timely backups of your disks.
We could just use the copy command that we learned about and copy all of the files one drawer at a time onto a disk that we carefully checked out.
But the DOS command to back up one drive to another is much easier because DOS lets you save large amounts of data from a larger disk to several smaller floppy disks.
Backup is entered as all one, followed by the disk or drawer you want to back up, a space, disk drive that is waiting to receive the data, and DOS will prompt you to periodically change disks when one disk is full and it's time to insert a new one.
Be sure that before you back up your hard disk, you have plenty of formatted disks standing by.
Logic Notes will instruct you with all the keystrokes that you need to use all of the variations of this very important and powerful tool. And it's really important to learn more about the backup command. And what if the worst thing you can imagine did happen to your hard disk?
And suddenly, without warning, your hard disk suffers a major meltdown.
Any disk drive can suddenly quit working, and all of your valuable files could be lost forever.
Hopefully, you will have made a backup recently, and then all you have to do is fix your disk.
Then, put the backed up disks to your hard disk. The DOS command to use is restore. Type in restore, the source drive of the data you want to replace, and where you want it to go to.
You will be prompted by DOS until all of your data has been properly put back where it came from.
And with DOS, you can walk into your filing department and copy the whole room.
That's about the same thing as copying an entire disk.
Our final DOS command is closer to the function of a gigantic photocopy machine.
And it's called the disk copy command.
The disk copy command makes a clone of a disk, an exact copy of everything that is on a disk.
With a single or a 2 floppy system, the disk copy command will duplicate the contents of one disk to another.
Type disk copy A to B or A to A.
Then DOS will tell you when and where to insert your disks.
This command will prepare backup copies of your important computer software disks.
We've given you all you really need to know to organize your computer files and finally start using DOS.
All of the DOS commands covered are the ones you use time after time to better manage your computer files.
Thank you for joining us.
We hope you have enjoyed this voyage through the important functions of your disk operating system.